men had been talking about the village most eligible bachelors, and when Shike's name came up, the tune shifted. Shike, one of the men, had laughed. He's a good man, but no woman will marry him. A long time ago, in a quiet village located in the east of eastern Nigeria, lived a man named Chike. The village, known as Emefule, was famous for its fertile land and abundant medicinal herbs, which the villagers had used for generations to treat various illnesses. It was a place where everyone knew everyone's name, and no secret could hide for long. Yet, among all the people in the village, one man's story stood out. Chike was a tall, muscular man in his late 20s, with a heart as gentle as the morning breeze. He worked as a farmer, tending to the crops that provided food for his family and the village. Though he was strong and hardworking, Chike had a burden he could not shake off. He was deaf. For as long as he could remember, the world around him had been a muted haze. He could hear faint sounds, but nothing clear enough to understand. As a child, he had learned to read lips and follow gestures, but his disability set him apart in the village, where people often value the ability to communicate through stories, songs, and laughter. Despite his kind nature and reputation as a skilled farmer, Chike had faced rejection after rejection from the women of Emefule. "How can I marry a man who cannot hear me?" they would whisper. "What if we have children and he cannot even hear their cries?" Others claimed his deafness was a curse passed down from his ancestors, and no woman wanted to be tied down to a man who might bring bad luck to her family. As the rejection piled up, Chike withdrew further into himself. He loved his family deeply, especially his aging parents, who worried endlessly about him. But every time a woman turned him down, the look in his eyes, a mist of pity and fear, left Chike feeling more isolated. He began to wonder if he would find someone who would love him, despite his disability to hear properly. Chike's family was not rich, but they were respected in the village. His father Okeke was known for his wisdom and his ability to work with his hands, crafting tools and fixing things around the village. His mother Nkechi was a healer, using the herbs that grew abundantly in Emefule to treat various illnesses and injuries. From her, Chike had learned the value of patience and kindness, washing as she carefully mixed leaves and roots to create paste that eased pain. Though his parents loved him deeply, they shared the village concern about his future. "Chike," his father would say, his voice heavy with worry, "you are a good man and I know you will make a fine husband. But the women in this village, they do not understand you. They only see what is on the surface." Chike would nod, understanding his father's words even though they pained him deeply. He had long given up trying to explain himself to others. His mother, however, still hid that hope. "There is someone out there for you," she would say as she ground herbs in stone mortar. "Someone who will see you for who you are, not for what you lack." But even she could not deny the years were passing, and Chike remained unmarried. He had approached several women, all of whom had turned him down, some gently, others with harsh words that cut deep. The gossip in the village did not help. It seemed that no matter what he did, his deafness was the first thing people saw, and it overshadowed everything else. It was in the midst of this quiet sorrow that a stranger arrived in Emefule. His name was Siddharth. He had come from India, seeking to establish a trade with the village. Emefiele was known for his herb, and Sidat, who had connection in international market, believed that these herbs could be sold far beyond the borders of Nigeria. The villagers, initially wary of the foreigners, soon warmed up to him. He was friendly and charismatic, eager to learn about their culture and share his own. Sidat had heard about Chike's story during one of his visits to the village square. The men had been talking about the village's most eligible bachelors, and when Chike's name came up, the tune shifted. Chike, one of the men had laughed. He's a good man, but no woman will marry him. He cannot even hear her call his name. Sidat, curious, asked about Chike, and the men explained the situation. Intrigued, Siddharth asked to meet Chike. I have known many people who have overcome great challenges, he said. Perhaps Chike is not as unfortunate as you think. The next day, Siddharth made his way to Chike's farm. He found Chike working in the field, his shirt soaked with sweat, his hands covered in dirt as he tilled the soil. Siddharth watched him for a moment, impressed by his strength and focus. Then he approached, waving to catch Chike's attention. Chike turned, surprised to see a stranger approaching him. He could not hear Siddharth's greeting, but he smiled politely, wiping his hands on his shirt before extending one to shake. Siddharth, realizing that Chike could not hear, pulled out a small notebook and began to write. My name is Siddharth, he wrote, showing the words to Chike. I have heard much about you. Chike read the note, his smile fading slightly as he wondered what this stranger had heard. He nodded in acknowledgement and Siddharth continued to write. I would like to be your friend, if you will let me. Chike was taken aback. A friend? It had been a long time since someone had approached him with such an offer. Most people in the village kept their distance, afraid or unsure of how to communicate with him. He nodded slowly and Siddharth smiled warmly. From that day forward, Siddharth and Chike became close friends. Siddharth often visited Chike at his farm, helping him with his work and learning from him about the land and the herbs that grew there. Chike, in turn, began to open up to Siddharth in ways he had not with anyone else. Though they communicated mostly through written words and gesture, Siddharth never seemed impatient or frustrated with Chike's deafness. Instead, he seemed to admire Chike's quiet strength and the way he had learned to navigate the world around him without sound. As the days passed, the news of Siddharth's presence in the village spread. The villagers were fascinated by the foreign businessman who had come all the way from India to exploit the herbs of Emefiele. They soon began to learn that Siddharth was not the only one from his family in the village. His sister, Dr. Pragya, was a medical doctor and a researcher, and she had accompanied him to Emefiele with a specific mission to study the medicinal properties of herbs that grew in that region. Dr. Pragya had been conducting research on herbal medicine for years, traveling to different parts of the world to learn about traditional healing practices. Her goal was to blend modern medicinal knowledge with ancient remedies, creating a bridge between science and nature. She had heard about Emefiele's vast array of herbs and their healing powers. So, when Siddharth mentioned his plan to visit the village, Pragya eagerly joined him, hoping to gather more knowledge for her research. Pragya was a strong, determined woman. She had always been driven by a desire to help others, and her research was a way to improve the life of those who did not have access to modern medicine. She was fascinated by the ideas that natural herbs could heal various illnesses that even the most advanced drugs struggle to treat. But her work was not just academical. it was personal. Pragya had seen the power of traditional medicine firsthand, having grown up in a household where her grandmother used herbs to treat various illnesses. This sparked her curiosity and inspired her lifelong pursuit of understanding the healing properties of nature. When Pragya arrived in Emefule, she wasted no time immersing herself in the local culture. She met with healers and herbalists, including Chike's mother, Nkechi, who was known for her deep knowledge of the village herbs. Nkechi welcomed Pragya warmly, sharing her wisdom and guiding her through the dense forest, where many of the most powerful herbs grew. Pragya took careful notes, examining each plant and learning how the villagers used them to treat everything from common cold to some serious diseases. One day, as Pragya was gathering herbs near Chike's farm, she saw him working in the field. She had heard about Chike from her brother Siddharth, who had told her about the man who could not hear but possessed a heart full of kindness. Curious, Pragya decided to introduce herself. Pragya approached Chike consciously, unsure of how to communicate with him. She had never met someone who was deaf before, and while she was used to interacting with people from different cultures and backgrounds, this was a new experience for her. Chike, busy with his work, did not notice her at first, but when she waved her hand, he turned to face her. Smiling, Pragya pointed to the basket of herbs she had collected. Chike's eyes followed her gesture and he nodded, recognizing the plants. He reached for a nearby herbs, plucking a few leaves and handing them to her. Pragya took the leaves and inspected them closely. They were exactly what she had been looking for, a rare herb used to treat infections. Grateful for his help, Pragya wanted to thank him, but she was not sure how. She pulled out a notebook, much like her brother had done, and wrote, "Thank you for helping me find the herbs. My name is Pragya." Chike read the note and smiled. He took the note and wrote back, "I am Chike." This simple exchange marked the beginning of their friendship. Over the next few weeks, Pragya visited Chike often as she continued her research. She found him to be a gentle and thoughtful man, always willing to help her find the help she needed. Though their conversations were limited by their need to write things down, Pragya did not mind. She appreciated Chike's quiet presence and the way he seemed to understand her even without words. As they spent more time together, Pragya began to notice things about Chike that the village had overlooked. He was incredibly observant, always paying attention to details of the world around him. Despite his deafness, he seemed to have a deep connection to nature, noticing the subtle change in the environment that others missed. He could tell when it's about to rain just by watching the way the leaf moved in the wind, and he knew which herbs were ready to be harvested simply by touching their leaves. Pragya admired Chike's resilience. She had learned from Siddharth about the rejections he had faced from the village women, and it pained her to think that such a kind man could be so misunderstood. But what struck her the most was how Chike had never let his disability define him. He continued to live his life with dignity, working hard and contributing to his family and the village, even though many people did not appreciate his worth. As their friendship deepened, Pragya began teaching Chike some basic sign language. She had learned a little during her medical training, and though she was not fluent, she knew enough to help Chike communicate more easily. Chike was a fast learner, and soon they were able to make smooth conversation using signs and gesture. Chike was surprised by how easily Pragya accepted him for who he was, Unlike the villagers who saw his deafness as a flaw, Pragya seemed to see it as just one part of him. She never pitied him or treated him differently because of it. In fact, she seemed genuinely interested in getting to know him as a person. This was something Shike had not experienced in a long time, and it filled him with a warmth he had not felt in years. Pragya, too, found herself growing more attached to Shike. She admired his strength and resilience, but more than that, she was drawn to his kindness. He was always willing to help her, even when it was not easy for him. He did not complain about his struggles, and he never sought sympathy for his condition. Instead, he focused on what he could do, and Pragya find that incredibly inspiring. One afternoon, as they were sitting under the shade of a large tree after a long day of gathering herbs, Pragya turned to Chike and sighed, "You are a good man, Chike." Chike looked at her surprised. No one had ever told him that before. He smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude and happiness he had not known in a long time. As Pragya and Chike's friendship grew, the villagers began to take notice. They could not understand why an educated, successful doctor like Pragya would spend so much time with someone like Chike. The gossip spread quickly, and soon everyone in Emefule was talking about them. Some people were supportive, seeing Pragya's interest in Chike as a positive thing. They began to question their own judgments about Chike, wondering if they had been too quick to dismiss him because of his deafness. Others, however, were more skeptical. They could not believe that someone like Pragya would seriously consider Chike as anything more than a friend. What does she see in him? One of the women in the village whispered to another neighbor as they moved by Chike's farm. He could not even hear her. Maybe she feels sorry for him, the other woman replied. But sympathy isn't love. Chike was aware of the gossip, but he tried not to let it bother him. He had grown used to the villagers' gossip over the years, and he knew that he could not control what people thought of him. What mattered most to him was that Pragya saw him for who he truly was, and that was enough. As the week passed, Pragya's fascination with Chike grew. She saw something in him that the villagers had failed to recognize, a deep connection and understanding with the world around him, born not for hearing but for observing. Chike's connection to nature, his attentiveness to even the smallest detail, and his quiet strength all drew her closer to him. One day, as they worked together to collect more herbs, Pragya asked Chike through gesture and writing about his experience growing up there. Chike hesitated at first. He rarely spoke of it even to his family because it brought up memories of isolation and rejection. But with Pragya, he felt comfortable enough to open up. He wrote in his notepad, "I was not born deaf. I could hear until I was 6. Then I got sick, and after I recovered, the sounds became faint, then disappeared completely." Pragya looked at him with compassion as she read his words. She could not imagine how difficult it must have been for a child to lose such a vital sense, especially in a community that relies so heavily on oral communication. Chike continued writing. "People did not understand. I could still feel vibrations and I could understand some things by watching lips move. But the village, they started to treat me differently. They said I was not the same anymore." Pragya touched his hand lightly, signaling her empathy. She understood how much strength it must have taken for Chike to build his life in a village where people only saw his deafness and not his abilities. She wanted to know more. "How do you handle it, all this rejection?" she sighed. Chike looked up at the sky, thinking for a moment. Then he smiled, a sad reflexive smile, and signed back, I have to leave. I work. I love my family. And I hope that one day someone will see me truly for who I am. Pragya felt a surge of emotion. Here was a man who had been rejected by nearly everyone around him. Yet, he still held on to hope. She admired his resilience. Pragya's heart began to stir in a way she had not expected. She had come to Emefule to study herbs, but now she was learning about something far more profound: human strength and the capacity to find love and connection even in the most difficult circumstances. Meanwhile, the villagers continued to gossip about Pragya's closeness to Shike. Many of them did not understand her interest in him, and some were even offended by the idea that an outsider, a foreigner, might see something in Chike that they themselves had overlooked. The village elders were particularly concerned. Emefile was a close-knitted community, and they were proud of their traditions. The idea of an Indian woman forming a close bond with one of their own, especially with someone like Chike, did not sit well with them. One evening, a group of elders gathered in the village square to discuss the matter. Chike is a good boy, but we cannot have a stranger from another land come here and break our custom, said Chief Obiara, the oldest and the most respected elder. The others nodded in agreement. What will the people say if she marries him? It will change things in the village. Another elder added, but what if she does not marry him? Asked a younger elder who had been listening quietly until now. Perhaps she is just here for the herbs. Let us not interfere too quickly. Chief Obiara considered this for a moment. We will watch them closely. If this relationship goes too far, we will step in. Emefule must remain as it is. And so, the elders decided to keep an eye on Chike and Pragya, not realizing that something deeper was already happening between them. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to like, leave a comment on what you think will happen next, and share this story with your friends, loved ones,